I'm joined by Daniel Drezner. He's a professor of international politics at Tufts University near Boston. Daniel, let me ask you about this. These two candidates, they really have to thread the needle in a way, don't they? They don't want to call too much attention to themselves, but they're sort of cheerleaders for the people at the top of the ticket and also defending them. Historically, how important are these debates?
Truthfully, not very. There have been some high points that we all remember from vice presidential debates. Think about Lloyd Bentsen telling Dan Quayle, "You're no Jack Kennedy." There was no denying that Lloyd Bentsen cleaned Dan Quayle's clock during that debate, and yet it didn't matter in the end. George H.W. Bush and Quayle won in 1988. The other example would be Sarah Palin against Joe Biden in 2008, where by and large the evaluation was Palin didn't do that badly, but in the end Palin and McCain lost in no small part because Palin was thought by many people to be unqualified. So usually these kinds of debates don't really matter that much. And if you take a look at sort of the polling that has occurred in modern elections, very rarely do you see any appreciable shift as a result of the vice presidential debate.
Let me ask you about these candidates, because it seems like most Americans don't know them and their positions. What about this being on the world stage, in a sense, being able to deliver a message to the American people? How important is that for them?
I think it's important in some ways, as you say, because I think something like 40% of Americans, or more than 40% of Americans, are unaware of who Tim Kaine and Mike Pence are and probably couldn't recognize them out of a lineup. So in some ways, this debate is the one opportunity that these two have after the conventions to kind of introduce themselves to the American people. But as you say, what they're really doing in this debate is not necessarily articulating their own policy positions. They're trying to make the case for their senior partners. So Kaine is trying to make the case for why people should vote for Hillary Clinton, and Mike Pence is similarly trying to do the same for Donald Trump. And so on any areas where Kaine and Clinton might have disagreed, Kaine is not going to bring that up, and similarly for Pence and Trump, Pence is not going to bring that up. Essentially, they're acting as sort of seconds for the presidential candidates in this debate.
So what about their views on foreign policy and the global economy? Both of them have served in Congress, so they obviously have some knowledge about foreign policy, but is that likely to be on display?
It should be on display. What will be interesting to see is whether or not, because that's actually some of the areas where, in fact, there are differences between the candidates. Kaine is generally thought to be somewhat to the left of Clinton when it comes to foreign policy. Clinton is thought to be more hawkish in terms of intervening, particularly in places like Syria. So it'll be interesting to see if Kaine sounds similar to Clinton. And in the clip that you already played, Pence criticized Clinton when she was Secretary of State for being soft on Putin, which is legitimately fascinating since the softest person on Putin is without question Donald Trump, who has said nothing but praiseworthy things about him during the entire election campaign. So it's been interesting to watch Pence change his positions both on Russia and to a lesser extent on issues like free trade, for example. And Kaine will make similar moves on things like the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
And Daniel, we had to pull you away from watching this undoubtedly, just as we did Nathan. What were your takeaways watching the debate early on?
I didn't think it was quite as exciting as Nathan did. I thought that in general there was an awful lot of crosstalk. So as a result, it was hard as a viewer to really get a sense of where either of them stood. And the problem is that compared to the outsized personalities of Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, this isn't quite as exciting a debate. So my hunch is in the end it won't matter all that much.
What about the toughest questions they're likely to face?
I suspect the toughest questions will deal with the scandals or the missteps of the presidential candidate. So in the case of Mike Pence, it'll be about Trump and his taxes or Trump and his statements about women that we've seen on display over the past week/month/year. In the case of Hillary Clinton, it'll likely be about the email issues that have dogged her over the last year, as well as questions about her health, and also potentially questions about whether or not, even as she's experienced, whether that experience is particularly valuable going forward.
Daniel Drezner joining us from Boston. Thanks so much.